Hey everybody, this is Games Plus James and welcome back to our Unity RPG tutorial series. Now in the last episode we added a simple health system to our player so that he can take damage from enemies and not just instantly die. So we want to do the exact same thing for our enemies. But before we do that, we want to be able to actually attack the enemies in a somewhat decent looking way, at least anyway. At the moment, all we're doing is walking along with our little sword, and if we can find one, walking into him, and or else maybe we're dying. But all we're doing at the moment is walking into them, and that's killing them automatically. What we want to do is add a little attack for our player to be able to do. So before we go adding some code or anything like that, let's first of all start off by making some animations of the player attacking, or at least sorting out the animator is what we want. No, we'll make the animations first, actually. It would make more sense. So what we'll do is, once again, we'll go back into the animation on this thing, and we want to make sure we have our player highlighted to start off with. And then we'll go to select one of the animations, but obviously instead of selecting one, we'll create a new one. And we want to make sure that we're saving this in the animations folder that we created before. And we'll call this one player attack down, like this. Okay, so then we want to go to our art file, much like we've done before when we were animating the walking and stuff like that. Instead, we're going to take the basically the fourth sprite in each row and use that for attacking, which is the kind of the player with his arm out. We'll see that now in a second. So we'll drag that over to here, just like we did before, and now we have a little thing of his arm facing forward a little bit. So then what we want to do is make sure we move the weapon again, like we did for when we were walking. So we'll grab our weapon, and we'll do the same thing of making sure that it's in front of the player again. So we'll change our Z value to -1, and then we'll move it into position roughly there. And obviously it doesn't make any sense for our sword to be pointing upwards like this, so we're going to change the rotation so that it's pointing straight down. So that when we are attacking an enemy, we're attacking it straight down like that. So we're going to do the same now for another one for attacking right. So we'll do player attack right, like this, and do the exact same stuff. We'll find the right facing one, which is this one here. Pop that in there like that. Do the same thing with our sword again. Oh no. Actually, we can see in the window here, our animation didn't update immediately because it just hasn't caught up. So the way to fix that is just click in the bar with the timeline up here, and it'll move back to the first frame of this new animation. Sometimes it kind of does some weird stuff like that. So we want to move our sword to the right position again. So we grab our weapon, move it over to roughly there. This time we're going to turn it to -904, -90, like that. Pop it in there like that, and that's perfect. Okay, and we want to do 2 more. So we'll have our player attack up like this, and again find the right sprite. That should be this one here. Click on the time bar to get it all into the right view in here, but although it hasn't yet, so there we go, now it worked. And then we'll move our weapon again, and much like we did before, we want to make sure and we're moving our weapon and not the actual sword object in our hierarchy here. So we put the weapon in the right position. Although it's facing upwards automatically from our view here, the animator won't know that. So again, we have to remember to change the Z value of rotation and then put it back to 0 again, so that it will remember it all here. And then finally we create one more, player attack left, and it should be facing this way. Here we go, the very last one in the sheet here. And then if we go, there we go. Okay, and we have that there. So again, we'll move our weapon to the right place like that, and we'll rotate it 90, and there we go, we got it facing the right way. So perfect. Now we've got our sword kind of roughly laid out, and of course we still have the thing where we want it, because we're switching between animations, we want it to click exactly in the right position, like we did before. So we're going to go through those animations again now and just highlight our position and our rotation of the weapon and go to both tangents, linear. So do the exact same for the other sides, linear, or sorry, not other sides, other directions. We go linear on all of them. Finally down. Linear. Okay, so we've got animations for him doing a little sword attack in every direction. So that's fine. So now we need to hook up how will they work in our animator. As before, we had our player movement and we had when the player's standing idle. They're the only two kind of sets of animations we were using. Now when you create animations, they automatically get added to your animator, which would have happened before, of course, but just to remind. So we don't need them there, so we're just going to highlight them and delete them because we're not actually going to use them as they are. We're going to delete all them, and then we're going to right click on our field here and create, go to create state and then new blend tree. We're just going to put that there for a second. And now, so when we're going to attack, we basically need to know whether the player is in a state where he's attacking or whether he's not. And to know that, we're going to add a little thing down here. So much like we used before to determine when the player's moving, then we would use this transition to go, okay, the player's moving, it's true, so we go over to here. We also want to know if the player's attacking. So we're going to hit the little plus sign here again, go to bool, which as we discussed before can only be true or false, and then we will hit, we'll call this just attack. So then we can know whether our player is standing still or moving, he can go to attacking. So we'll actually rename this blend tree here to attack pose, just so we know, so we can keep track of things nice and handily. So we know he'll be able to go from moving to attacking, so we'll make a transition from there to attack. And on that one, like we did before, we want to turn off exit time, we want to turn off fixed duration, and transition duration should be 0. And on our conditions list here, we'll hit the plus, and we want to set this to attack is true. So when attack is true, then we know we're attacking, so we want to go to the attack pose. And similarly, we want to go from standing still, we want to do the exact same thing as well. So we'll turn off exit time, turn off our transitions and everything, and hit the same condition again. So attack is true. And when we're doing our attack is basically going to be our player, whether he's walking or whether he's moving, he does his little attack and he stops as he's attacking. So, because we've only got one frame of animation, that's what we've got going on here. So we know that if he's stopped when he's attacking, he's immediately going to go back to stopped movement. He's not going to go back to moving from there. He's going to go back to standing still first, and then if the player is pressing a button to move, then we'll start moving again. So we can now go make transition from the attack pose just back to idle, and again turn off our exit time and all this stuff. It is kind of annoying that all this stuff gets automatically generated, but it's handy for if you're doing other stuff in Unity that isn't just sprite based. So this time we'll go to our attack, and this time we'll say false. So when the player's not attacking, we'll go out of our attack poses and back to standing still or moving. So we need to go into our attack pose to set up our blend tree like we did before for attacking in our 4 different directions. So on our blend type up here, we go to 2D simple. Our parameters, again, we'll base this on whatever last input was given. So our last move X and our last move Y. And just the exact same as we did last time when we were adding our animations, we'll go in here. So we'll do our player attack down. So that'll be on our Y axis, -1. We'll add another one and say our player attack left. That'll be -1 on our X axis. Then we'll go for right, and that'll be 1 on our X axis. And then finally, we'll go for player attack up, and that'll be 1 on our Y axis. Perfect. Okay, so yeah, that should be that all set up basically. If we scroll this down a bit, we can see, yeah, our different directions are all set up. But of course, if we go to play the game now, we haven't actually added anything to our scripts, so it won't know how to do anything. So we need to go into our player controller script and be able to tell our animator how to actually move our player, or how to recognize when our player is attacking. So obviously we're going to need some variables to be able to control our attacks. So first of all, we'll need a private bool that we'll call attacking, and this will be either true or false for our own use to be able to tell within the script itself whether our player is attacking or not. And obviously, if our player is going to be holding this little animation of attacking straight ahead of him, we want that to only last a certain amount of time. So we're going to create a private float called attack time, and obviously that'll be our setting for how long we want our player to attack for, but we don't want to reuse that one. Much like we've done before, we want to use a kind of a counter to determine how long, to keep track of how long our attack time is lasting on each particular instance. So we'll say another private float called attack time counter. Actually, I just made a little mistake there. Our first attack time, our first float here that we call attack time, that should be a public one, because we want to be able to set a value for that. So say like half a second, we want to say the attack time will last, and then every time we do an attack, we'll set our attack time counter will be equal to that, and it'll count down until our attack time has run out, basically. Okay, so we need to detect when our attack should happen. So we'll say, down here we'll say if input dot get key. So we'll say get key down, and we're going to use if the player presses say J, I think is a perfectly reasonable one. So we'll say input the get key down, and the difference between just get key and get key down is get key is if the button is currently being held down. So if you were to hold a space bar, for example, or if you were to hold J, which is the button we chose to use, so I don't know why I said spacebar, but if you were to hold J and that was initiating the attack, if you were to hold it down, then it would just constantly be using the attack. But if we use get key down, that only gets the very first moment the J button is pressed. So if you keep holding it down, then it won't keep doing the attack, it'll only do it once. So we'll say input the got key down, key code dot J. That should be capital C. Yeah, key code dot J. And we put another close bracket there. That should be a capital K as well, actually. I just missed that. Okay. And then we'll do our curly brackets here like this. Okay, and so basically in here, what we need to do is just, we want to set that timer that we just set up. So we'll say our attack time counter is equal to attack time. We want to set attacking to be true. Attacking is equal to true. We obviously want our player to be frozen in place now when he does his little attack. So we're going to, much like we've done with our get axis and moving left and right and up and down, we want to set our rigid body. So my rigid body dot velocity, we just want to set that to be 0. So rather than having to do vector2 or new vector2 and then 0 and 0, we can just say vector2 dot 0, and that just creates a vector2 object with an x and a y value of 0. It's very straightforward. And then finally, what we want to do is tell our animator that attack down here is now true. So we've done that before down here with our setting our floats and our bools here. So we'll just say anim dot set bool, and the bool we're setting is attack, and we're going to set that to be true, just like that. Okay, so now, although nothing else is going on here, we haven't gotten our attack time counter set up, but we should be able to, if we go in here, we should be able to see our sword animation in action here. It won't know when to stop, so it'll just kind of stay animated, but that's okay. Just as an example, we'll do this now. Okay, here we go. It's finished compiling, so we can run it. Okay, so we can walk around and all that, and if we hit J, we start our attack. But of course we can now just wander around with our sword out in front of us in an action pose because we haven't told it when to stop doing stuff yet. And we can also see that we're able to freely move around like this, so we're not actually being frozen in place yet. And so we want to make a fix to that as well. And the way we will fix that is we don't want to be able to do another attack or anything while our attack is taking place also. So before all these inputs are taking place here, we're going to add a new if statement. We're just going to say if attacking. So if we were doing this, if we're saying if attacking is true, then we're going to run all this stuff. But we don't want to do that. We want to say if the attacking is false. So if not attacking, then we want to put a curly bracket here so that we know that if we're not attacking, then we're allowed to be able to move around in the world with all this stuff, and we're able to start an attack. So we're going to put another little close bracket at the end here so that all this whole section here is now within this if statement. So now we know if we have set attacking to be true, then we can't do any of this stuff here now. So now we need to be able to determine what happens when we're attacking and how will we get back to the state where we're not attacking anymore. So that's all obviously controlled by our little attack time counter. So if our attack time counter, here is greater than 0, greater than or equal to 0, then what we're going to do is we're going to say our attack time counter minus equals time dot delta time. So all that'll do is just simply take our attack time counter and it'll just tick it down over time. And if it's still above 0, then nothing else is going to happen. We won't say greater than or equal to, we'll just say if it's greater than 0. And then here we'll say if our attack time counter is less than or equal to 0, then we want to actually do some stuff. So here we want to say, okay, now our attacking, we don't want that to be true anymore because our counter has run out. So we will say attacking is equal to false. So now here our not attacking will be true now. So we'll be able to take more input and be able to attack again if we want to. And then down here we will just say we will tell our animator now that our set bool should be false, so our attack is now false, like that. And then that should be it actually. Sorry, I was confusing myself there for a second. So now we have our attacking is false and our animator knows that our attack has ended as well. So we should be able to, we'll go back to being able to move again, and during our time where our attack is taking place, we won't be able to move. Okay, so we'll go back into Unity. So as you can see, we're starting to make some changes to the code that we already had, and it's good to be able to kind of keep track of stuff in your head of what's going on as you're doing this stuff too, and keep track of where everything makes sense. And that's why we didn't want to, if we just go back in here, we wouldn't want to start, we have all these inputs in the same section here, so we wouldn't want to start adding inputs down somewhere else because we're only confusing ourselves. If we just have one little area where we're taking inputs, and then if other stuff is happening within our player controller, we can either add that before or after this stuff. But you kind of want to keep everything logically making some kind of sense. Okay, so we have ourselves walking around here now. We can hit our attack and nothing happens. Why is nothing happening? Let me just go back in here. Oh, because we haven't, I know why, because we haven't set an actual value for our attack time. That's what it is. If we find our player controller here, there we go. So we haven't actually set an amount of time for our attack to take place, so it's immediately saying, okay, time is up, so we don't have to actually run our attack. Okay, play this again here now. And this time we'll see, there we go, we got our attack. We can't move, and I'm just holding a direction here. And we get paused while we do our little attack. And there you go. So now it actually looks like we're getting a little bit of action going on. And that's kind of the basics of just adding a very simple little attack into your game, and suddenly we're actually able to do something. I do want to just quickly do a couple of little fixes. So when our player is moving down like this, at the moment his sword is kind of walking in front of him like that I don't think that actually looks good, so we're just going to quickly fix that. So we're going to set the rotation on the sword to be we want it to be 0. Oh no, on the player we don't want to actually do anything. That was a mistake. We wanted to use it on the weapon here. If we set a rotation on the player, that would start messing things up on us, so we want to set it to 0. We want to do the same on when our player is facing down. And what's handy is we only have to do it in the first frame, so it doesn't actually do anything too bad at all to us. So our weapons rotation, yeah, there we go, because I hadn't clicked on the timeline. I was wondering why the number was wrong up here. So there we go, we did that. Let's just make sure it was okay on our player move down. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So now when he's walking along, his sword will be pointing up and it won't look as weird. So then when he actually does his attack, the sword will appear to suddenly fly forward, which is what we want to happen. Okay, so now that the sword is kind of in the right positions, we can go ahead and we'll play this and just see how that looks now. And we should see, as we're walking down, it kind of looks a little bit more sensible this time. And if we do our attack, it actually looks like he's doing a real attack. So we can attack our enemies just like that, just the way we want to. So perfect. Now we've got a nice little animation. So now next time when we come back, we can start adding some actual damage to our enemies, and then we can start adding some effects to make it look a little bit better when we attack our enemies. So thanks for watching this episode. I will be back soon with some more RPG tutorial goodness. And in the meantime, thank you all for watching. Goodbye. Thanks for checking out this episode, and if you want even more Games Plus James goodness, make sure you hit those subscribe and like buttons. You can also find me on Twitter and Facebook by following the links on screen, where you can find out all the latest news about the channel. And if you want to help support the show, check out the Patreon page, where you can get exclusive content in return for helping make the channel even better. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.